Thank you very much for coming today. I'm attorney Gloria Allred, and with me on my left is Kurt Knutsson, and on my right is Mary Hale, who is the jury foreperson. Behind me is my law partner Nathan Goldberg and my law partner John West, and everyone will be speaking. We're here today with Kurt Knutsson. Kurt is known to millions of television viewers as Kurt the Cyberguy. But today he's more than that. Today, Kurt the Cyberguy is also Kurt the winner, because he prevailed in his lawsuit against overwhelming odds. Kurt and our law firm faced off in court against the giant Tribune Media Company and their wholly owned subsidiary, Los Angeles television station KTLA. After years of litigation, yesterday, a Los Angeles County jury found that KTLA owed Kurt $3,949,385, which includes interest, because KTLA refused to honor its contract with him. This jury's verdict in favor of Mr. Knutsson is a complete vindication of his claim. On Valentine's Day, in February 2011, Kurt, who had been described by KTLA, quote, as the most watched technology personality in America, end quote, was abruptly taken off the air. Kurt was in complete shock. This occurred weeks after KTLA and Tribune Media had landed the largest news sponsorship deal in its history as a result of Mr. Knutsson's efforts and based on what he had built over 14 years. AT&T had agreed to sponsor Kurt and his syndicated Cyberguy reports across the nation in a multi-million-dollar deal which was pure profit for KTLA and other Tribune-owned stations. Mr. Knutsson's contract required that the revenue generated by the AT&T deal be shared with Mr. Knutsson. However, rather than sharing the revenue as required, KTLA, without warning or cause, took Mr. Knutsson off the air and refused to pay him what he was owed. It took Mr. Knutsson more than 7 long years to finally get his chance to tell a Los Angeles jury what happened. Many of those jurors were KTLA viewers. We always believed that Mr. Knutsson got a raw deal. He had built a national brand, the most successfully syndicated tech feature in the United States. We felt that a jury hearing from Mr. Knutsson would be sympathetic to Mr. Knutsson's breach of contract claim and would recognize that fairness required that Mr. Knutsson receive what was promised to him. We were confident that the jury would reach the right result, and they did. It is very important that the public understand that it is possible, even in a David and Goliath situation, that an individual may prevail if they have truth on their side and the determination to fight for justice. Mr. Knutsson is here today with the trial team from our office of Nathan Goldberg and John West that helped him achieve his victory. Our law firm is very, very proud of Mr. Knutsson and also that we were able to help him achieve his victory. And now I present Mr. Knutsson. I'll move this over from here.
Thank you, Gloria, and thank you, both of you, all of you. There's so many people that were behind me for these past 7 years. Today is an incredibly important day for me. It took me more than 7 years to be able to get to a courtroom in Los Angeles, California, Department 36, and yesterday I sat in that courtroom and heard the jury find in my favor. Yeah, I couldn't stop crying then, and it's coming back now. I just am so overwhelmed because it was I'm finally vindicated. I felt that the jury understood what I had endured, and I had spent 14 years building a national brand known as Kurt the Cyberguy, and KTLA took everything I had built away from me literally overnight. Why? I felt it was about greed. They were to receive millions of dollars, and based on my contract, I was entitled to share in that revenue, but they didn't care about my rights. I had always had the confidence that truth and justice would prevail, and it did. And I thank my lawyers for believing in me, my family for standing with me, and the jury for listening to the evidence and finding in my favor. I'm so grateful.
Thank you. And now my partner, Nathan Goldberg.
Thank you. Thank you, Gloria. Thank you, Kurt. From the first time that I met Mr. Knutsson, I believed that if we could present his case to a jury, that he would win. He created Kurt the Cyberguy brand from nothing by his hard work, by his talent, and by his perseverance. What happened to him was very unfair. KTLA had no reason to take him off the air and then refuse to pay him that what he was owed. This verdict to me is a reminder that truth can triumph, and Kurt won. Thank you.
This is my partner, John West.
Thank you, Gloria, Nathan, jury, and Kurt. In addition to what my partner said, I just want to add that this case was very challenging. We argued that KTLA couldn't escape liability by relying on language in Kurt's contract that we claimed was ambiguous and subject to interpretations. The jury agreed with us, and I'm proud to have represented Mr. Knutsson and to be part of a victory in this case in particular. Thank you.
Okay, I'll bring the mics over to you.
Hi, I'm Mary Hale. I'm the foreperson of the jury that made the decision on this case. I'm sure you're interested in hearing how we arrived at this decision. One critical matter we decided was looking at the contract. There was a place where KTLA was to act in good faith in deciding whether to grant the commission or not. What we found is KTLA did not act in good faith. In fact, Mr. Cresini, president of KTLA, decided he would never honor that aspect of Kurt's contract for the additional payments. This was even before Mr. Knutsson had ever taken this action to satisfy those requirements. In fact, there was no subsequent investigation by KTLA to evaluate Mr. Knutsson's rationale for wanting payment for meeting these terms of the contract. They never met with Mr. Knutsson to understand, or his agent, to understand what they did to earn the commission. And they never consulted their own attorney that drafted the contract, nor did they consult the internal sales staff that eventually drafted a sales agreement, which they themselves said they would have been consulted if such a evaluation had been done. We then looked to see if Mr. Knutsson did in fact introduce a new client as called for in the contract. The defense asserted that the term introduce a new client was a simple concept. None of us on the jury felt that that was the case. We felt it's actually somewhat ambiguous in some ways. It's not clear. But then we were called to look at the evidence to make a decision. One compelling piece of evidence is that KTLA in the past had granted a commission on a very similar agreement. We did not see any substantial difference between that agreement and this new agreement, the new commission, other than the size of the award. But the real cincher was Mr. Cassini's own testimony, where he agreed that if Kurt had introduced a new client, as we had thought that he had, if he had taken those actions, set up a meeting, so forth, and that resulted in new business with ATT Uverse, he would indeed be due the commission. His assertion that he hadn't done that, in the evidence we found, he did in fact do that. And so by Mr. Cassini's own testimony, he deserved this commission. Another aspect of the contract is that this introducing a new client would result in new business to KTLA and its affiliates. We found that is indeed the case. This led us to the next part of the contract, is what commission was due. The commission is based on 20% of revenues over the term of the contract. So the key for us as a jury is, what is the term? The term is clearly defined in the contract as the 5-year period starting from the beginning of the contract. This made it clear to us that we saw no reason that we should interpret it any other way. So we decided that he is due the 20% over the 5-year period of any revenues received as a result of the new business. Another twist was to look at that during that term, the Cyberguy brand was not used after Valentine's Day 2011. But since this was a direct result of KTLA's action only, nothing to do with Kurt, nothing to do with AT&T, it prevented Mr. Knutsson's ability to perform on that part of the contract. He should not be accountable for that, and KTLA is still required to pay the commission. The jury is sad that this took so long and could not be settled before it came to us to decide. We are happy, though, to have played a part in restoring to Mr. Knutsson at least part of what's due to him. And congratulations, Kurt.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And so we'll be happy to answer any questions if there are any questions.
So in your contract, that language about introducing a new client to KTLA was in your contract before this meeting with AT&T?
Yeah, so Nathan will answer that question. Okay.
Yes, the language was in the agreement even before Mr. Knutsson introduced the new client.
So there was an understanding that, look, if he brought this meeting and it came to fruition that they entered a new contract with KTLA and AT&T, that Kurt would get a part of it.
Yes, that was the intent. That was the idea behind it, that he ultimately was responsible for introducing AT&T Uverse, which over the term of his contract generated over $11 million of pure profit for KTLA and its sister its sister stations, and Kurt was entitled to his fair share.
And Nathan, we heard from Kurt and the juror foreman that it wouldn't, it took so long to get to this point, and it's kind of sad that it did. Why did it take 7 years?
Just because KTLA fought us every step of the way. There were various times that they made motions, there were delays. Unfortunately, part of it just has to do with the jury system in Los Angeles County, which oftentimes requires that you have to go to court a number of times before you get your day in court. But ultimately, even though it took forever, it seemed, we finally did have our day, and we had the ability to seek justice and obtain justice.
And Kurt, can we hear from you what it was like waiting these 7 years? What kind of hardship you went through and what you were allowed to do?
Kurt, you want to just sit over here?
Yeah, I'll just jump over here.
Go ahead.
In my wildest imagination, having loved for 15 years working at KTLA, did I think overnight I would be taken off the air, and for no other reason than greed. No other reason is to not pay me. And it was extremely frustrating over the years, and this is a small business. And when you decide to sue a giant media company, it's a small world up in those executive suites. So it has not been easy because you're essentially tainted as a troublemaker in this industry. I set on, though. I was determined. I just knew that the truth stood with me, and if I got a smart team behind me, and if one day I could get in front of a jury, and I did, that amazing people like Mary would put their 2 cents together and say, gosh, that's not right. Let's make this right. And they did. And it was so incredibly frustrating to wait 7 years because I had to liquidate essentially everything I had to fight this case just to get to today. So the duration of getting there, torture. Today, complete vindication is the reason I just absolutely lost it and broke down in court. I did. And I will tell you, like, one of the most amazing experiences wasn't that I won. It was to be heard, to be an American and just have your day in court felt incredible.
And I read somewhere, I don't know if it was the sheet that you sent out earlier, that age discrimination was part of this case, or
Could you speak up? It's hard to hear.
age discrimination, was that?
Oh,
that
age
all
dis-
part
okay,
of this
wait.
case? I read that in,
Okay.
I think before.
All right, you want to answer
That was, yeah, that was one of the claims that was originally pled in the case. However, we did not pursue that.
Age discrimination.
Yes, we did not pursue that.
Was he also terminated as well?
Well, his contract was terminated. So, yes. Yes.
And are you tainted on the business? Do you want to go back, or are you done?
I love being the cyber guy. I
Okay,
would
do
welcome.
you want to be in front of the
Yeah.
microphone?
Since being a kid and taking apart the intercom system at home and loving how technology works, I love being the cyber guy. Would I like a future opportunity? I'm online. Come get me. I would love it. I would love it.
KTLA have any other suits pending like this, or?
Okay, well. I don't think we have anything right now. No, we don't have any other lawsuits against television networks that are being litigated right now. But of course, in this industry, television industry, we have done many confidential settlements pre-litigation, that is, trying to resolve disputes prior to any lawsuit being filed. And most are settled that way. So we cannot disclose against whom. We have made claims on behalf of our clients, some of whom may be reporters, some of them are people who work behind the camera, some are not talent or people behind the camera, but do work as an important parts of the television industry. So not only here in the Los Angeles area, the Southern California area, but elsewhere in the country as well. So we've done many of those, and we're not able to disclose against whom or who we represented or what the issues were that were in dispute. But this was a David and Goliath battle. That can't be said too often. One person against a giant corporation, but one person, David, against Goliath, was able to prevail. So we're all especially happy about this day and extremely grateful to the entire jury, but as also to its leader, to the jury foreperson, Mary Hale. Anything else?
expect them to appeal this decision?
It won't surprise me if they do file a notice of appeal. This is a very substantial award, a justified award as far as we're concerned, for Kurt. But we'll have to see. In the event that they decide to proceed to appeal, certainly, Kurt is going to be there to assert his rights and to protect the jury award and the verdict.
Because there is a pending sale of Tribune, as we all know, and
There is.
I'm wondering if maybe they may skip the appeal because of the pending sale.
You would have to ask KTLA what they have decided to do, if in fact they have made that decision at this point.
And Mary, was it pretty clear cut in the jury's mind?
Okay, I'll just do
Given
this so
that
you won't have to move there.
it was language in the contract that was prior to this meeting happened, business.
So the question was this a clear-cut decision for the jury?
Right.
Okay, well, let's talk about, for example, how many hours you deliberated, and then you answer her question. Okay, the
Yeah,
jury.
so I think it was about 3 hours at most we deliberated. We just took the job very seriously and really gave both sides a chance. And but the more we looked at it, the more clear it became for us.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for
everyone.
coming. Okay.